And I know many of you know the story of Tibet, but for those of you who don't know anything about it or know very little about it, I want to straighten out a couple things real quick. And that is that the Chinese invaded the country. They didn't annex it, or they didn't just assume authority. They invaded with 40,000 troops, killed a lot of Tibetans, and took control of a government that was not a military government at that time. Couldn't defend itself. An independent government that had its own passports, its own treaties with other countries, its own economic system, its own flag, and its own democratic, well, I can't say a democratically elected leader. No, they had their own system of government. Let's see. I think I wanted to say that, in the course of that time, since the Chinese invaded, over 1 million people have died as a consequence to that invasion. The situation is totally analogous to what happened here in North America, and I think it's appropriate that drum is beating right now, because it's the heart of the people of this planet. It's the indigenous people who are forever suffering on this planet, and who are... The Tibetans are indigenous people.
You give the wrong information.
No, we're giving the right information. You're giving the wrong information.
Shame.
No, it's not a racial issue here. It's not a racial issue, and let's not make it that. It's a government issue. It's a communist government that somehow our world is... Oh, here comes this gentleman. You want to say? Okay, we're going to let this gentleman talk for just a moment here, because I think he wants to talk. But just a minute.
I understand it. I understand that you guys, if you know the history of the Tibet and of the China, you will take a correct attitude to what is happening in Tibet recent days. And as I know, recent what happened in Tibet is a kind of violence, not you so-called protest or demonstration. Understand, most of the young generation don't know the history exactly about Tibet. At least since 1500 years ago, Tibet has been a part of China.
No.
Think about the Tang Dynasty. Tang Dynasty. Think about the Tang Dynasty.
Let him speak, let him speak.
Think about the Tang Dynasty.
Let him speak.
Since Tang Dynasty, the queen, the daughter, Vietnam is another problem. Another. I don't want to talk about
Taiwan
that.
belongs
But
to
right now,
Japan.
Taiwan is also part of China.
No.
Taiwan since 2,000 years ago. I told you guys, if you know the history, read the history.
We know the history. We know your
Okay.
history. We know your history.
Think about Quebec in Canada.
We know Quebec's history too. The Aboriginal people of Quebec. We know the history.
Okay, read the history of North Island of Great Britain. Okay, Great Britain history. Okay, I don't. If you guys are still like that, no talk will be. Never be success.
Free Tibet! Free Tibet! Free Tibet! Free Tibet!
I got my PhD from USA. I have both the background of that society and the China. I have
Okay, hello, I'm going to resume our schedule here. Please, don't make it a personal issue. It's not a personal issue, okay? let's be harmonious here. Let's be peaceful.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to start again. I think I'll address the historical issue immediately, okay?
Yeah.
I happen to have studied this history in detail. I've made it my thing for now, I guess, 18 years. And I'm not an expert, but I do know the history quite well. As a matter of fact, I know it almost year by year what happened in Tibet. And the gentleman, what he's referring to, and it's good for everybody to know this, it's really good to know what these people are saying, what the Chinese government is saying, because what this gentleman is trying to tell us is what the Communist Chinese government is saying. He's telling us the party line. But what he's referring to is the Tang dynasty. In fact, what he's referring to is when the Mongolians invaded most of Asia from Mongolia. The independent kingdom of Mongolia had nothing to do with China. It's not a Chinese kingdom. It was a Mongolian kingdom. The Mongolians conducted a major takeover of most of Asia right up into the borders of Europe. Genghis Khan was the man who started first, right? So it was a terrific takeover of Asia. Now they invaded China before they invaded Tibet. The Tibetans were wise people, and they went to the borders to meet with the Mongolians and said, please don't come in and slaughter our people. We surrender, but would you allow us to run our country as we choose? The Mongolians at that time were converting to Buddhism, and they said, you can run Tibet unharmed, undisturbed, but we are the overlords of Asia, and you know that. And that was the case. There was no Chinese takeover. Now what the Chinese government is saying is they're saying the Mongolians are Chinese. I'm telling you, that's a big insult to a lot of Mongolians. As a matter of fact, when the Mongolians invaded China and took over China, the Mongolians hated the Chinese. They wouldn't allow their own people to intermarry, etc. So there's no question that there was any kind of Chinese takeover at that time. So that's mainly where the Chinese government is basing their historical review of it. It's total distortion of history. In their own lingo, it's revisionism. But let's move on.